you are working independently on beginning to move from the results into the discussion section. So I just want to touch on a few items that I want you to remember. So this week we are doing a smaller submission that's due by Friday on mechanism and support, the support of the references you're going to be using in the discussion section, right? The mechanism I'm going to talk about. This mechanism of action is just speculation as to how and why the results happened. We will be using this week's assignment and put it into next week's assignment, which is the full discussion. So let's just go over some of the points that we've covered up to this part so you know how to be working independently on your own on compiling and summarizing your results. So I want to remind you to go back to the ebook and take a look at chapter 5. Sometimes we forget after we've done those initial quizzes to go back and use the book. It's going to step-by-step help you. So we this week are doing the mechanism of action, right? Speculating as to how and why the results that you reported last week occurred. So go back, take a look at chapter 5. Many of you need to brush up on your Journal of Physiology citation, which you're going to be finding in chapter 6. So when you think about the discussion section, this is going to be our topic for the next couple of weeks. It's explaining what the results mean. So when you uploaded your methods and results, the results was very point blank, not very long. You had your figure that helped to give a visual reinforcing the data. Now we're going to elaborate. So we're going to begin by, again, this week doing the mechanism and frame this into your own words. So when you think about the mechanism and support, you are writing your proposed mechanism as a single statement, right? So 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't need to be very long. When I say single statement, it doesn't necessarily just mean 1 sentence, but you're explaining why you found the results you found. You also need to make sure you dig into your literature review. Dig into the findings of others that align closely supporting your results. So we need supportive references here. These 2 pieces of support may be linked nicely into your writing into this mechanism, or you might for this week simply write your mechanism and just literally list those citations that you plan on incorporating next week into the larger discussion assignment. Again, like always, this is a draft. We are going to take time to clean it up. Your mechanism of support usually is the opening sentence or near the opening sentence of your discussion. So when you think about the full discussion, it's where you now get to speak in your own voice, right? So remember, up to this point, you were referencing very scientific and technical writing. Now you're beginning this conversation, right? This discussion with an interpretation of the results. Remember that in the introduction, you identified the big question. In the methods, you created a small sample to try to answer that large question. And now here in the discussion, you're moving back out of the small sample, going back into that introduction moving back into that big question you posed in your introduction section. Go back and read your introduction. Read how you framed this question. Take a look at how you wrote it in your methods. What were you trying to answer? Take a look at how you came up with your results. Right? Go back to the paper that we walked through and the slides are listed on Canvas for you when we took a look at postmenopausal women and we look at bone mineral density. Very cleanly, we dissected that paper, and that is how I want you to be able to chunk down your expectations in this paper. So were the results expected or unexpected? I know this is odd because you made up your own results for this class, but don't use the words expected or unexpected. Don't write them that way. Most typically, this is written as the results were consistent with Brown et al. 2010. Right? The results were consistent. The results aligned with. The results were similar with. Look in the rubric for the proper way to do this. How do your results compare with the results of other work? Right? So I know you made up these answers because that's how we do this class, but you need to find literature that supports what you made up. So this week we are doing the mechanism section. Why do you think your experiment turned out this way? I'm looking for you to use what we call biological mechanism here. This is kind of the fun part of writing up your research. You're speculating why this happened. You're permitted to have some fun with this. You're going to start with a paragraph and a sentence that is your own idea, right? Don't cite anybody here. You are in your own words stating, and they're nice, articulate, technical writing. You are then going to highlight your proposed mechanism sentence. Right, you will then need to support this speculation. So state why this happened, followed by some support that these findings align with. This is where you're going to be probably threading in these references. Remember, we need at least 2 references cited here. Go back to our example to help you understand where the mechanism and support fits into the discussion. Again, this week, the first assignment is to just write the mechanism, your speculation, and either support with very nicely written, it aligns with, or if you're not ready to do that, simply list them. If you go back to what we did many weeks ago, it was question 5. What do the results mean? Right? Almost always the first sentence of the discussion is simply, what do the results mean? So remember, in that postmenopausal women with bone density, the present study confirms that fast walking is an effective exercise for bone mineral preservation and accrual of early postmenopausal women. This is your own voice, right? This is not cited by anyone, right? So what do the results mean? It simply meant, right, that sentence says that fast walking is an effective way to maintain bone mineral density. So what is the biological mechanism? Here we go, right? It goes into the biological mechanism. It talks about osteogenic exercise intensity for bone mineral preservation and accrual of postmenopausal women. It talks about that osteogenic threshold. It gives some good founding facts that support that first sentence you just wrote. So when you think about what is the mechanism of those results, the mechanism, guys, is that scientific finding. For this study, it was the word osteogenic threshold. Speed and peak force when it looked at the intensity. So I'm trying to help you connect how a previous, right, this example is going to align with what you're going to be submitting this week. Moving on to next week, right? Next week is now the entire discussion, constructing the entire discussion section using your mechanism and support. The discussion should suggest future research, should be looking at future experiments that will add to the work, as well as significance of your experiment. What does this mean to the world? What does this mean to already published data? You have not likely solved world peace in this paper, but the area of science in which you are working should benefit from your work. So explain how your experiment that we just did in the short class fits in to this big gap in the research that you discussed in your introduction. Next week's paper should be 2 pages long, right? This is the full 2 pages, double space, 12 font, all of the basics. Tense is always tricky with the discussion because we are referring to the work that you've completed past tense, but you're comparing your work to information that is known in the present tense. So you're required to have at least 4 cited papers, no more than 6, which must all be peer-reviewed journals. Even if you've cited more than 4 in the introduction, you need 2 more new sections here. You must cite, identify new sources in the literature section by bolding the last name in the first author, right? So listen, guys, citations matter. You need to have support. You need to be aligning with what's already been published. So you need 4 papers, no more than 6. If you're adding new sources here, please alert me by bolding them. So my focus is raised that we now have new papers in here. The full assignment, the format is listed and posted on Canvas. So the title, right? What are your variables, X, Y, and Z? Discussion with that heading, references with that heading, all uploaded PDFs in the Dropbox, properly formatted this time, right? So how do you save your PDFs and how are you saving them in Canvas? When we think about storytelling, right, this is kind of the main things I should be seeing in the discussion for following week, right? So this week is a small assignment, the mechanism and support. Next week is the full discussion. So interpretation, proposed mechanism, future work, and significance. How do you cite, reviewing how you cite, right? Knowing how you do your in-text citation and making sure you take a look at what in-text citation looks like. And don't forget to review the rubric, right? This is how you get your points. So this is the rubric for this week, mechanism and support. I did not snapshot or take a photo of the large rubric for next week, but it's all posted there on Canvas. You know how to find me. If you want to meet, if you want to chat, I'm available. This week's assignment should be rather fun, speculating on your findings. Very short, not a long paper is what you're uploading this week. Good luck.